Well, it's that time of year and it's time to plant my fall potager garden. I am so excited to finally get to this point. Stay tuned, and at the end, you'll see what it looks like 2 weeks later. Today, we're going to plant some elephant garlic. Now, here in our zone 8, we want to plant this from September to November before the cold sets in. You want to give the plants enough time to set in a good, healthy root system before it gets too cold. And for the northern climates, you want to plant it before your ground freezes. You want to take the bulb of garlic and you want to separate the cloves. Don't peel this white lining off. Just separate the cloves. You want to plant it with this pointed end up. In this bed, I planted 4 rows of garlic, 3 rows of elephant garlic, some German white hardneck, and some soft neck. And here, very important, always label what you planted so when you go to harvest it, you know exactly what you're going to harvest. I'm really trying to do better about it this year. And then cover that garlic with mulch. That garlic's going to pop right up through the straw. Next, I'm planting some Thom multiplying onions, and even though these look dead, in about a week, you will see green popping through here. These onions do well in a raised bed and require minimum care. Now, I can't really say this, it's LITOI, and this is a new variety of multiplying onions that we are carrying this year. Next, we're going to plant some radishes, and this Hello's golden radish is one of my favorites. Its days to maturity is 25 days. And also some watermelon radish. Now, its days to maturity is a little bit longer. So I've made me 2 little furs here on either side of this drip tape, and I'm just going to sprinkle them in there. And if I get them too thick, I'm really not worried about it. I can go back and thin them out later. On the other side, I'm planting the watermelon radish, and again, I'm just liberally planting them in here, and I'll thin them back if I need to once they come up. Then I'm going to take my garden rake and just pull that soil over the seed there and tamp it down with the end of the rake. In this bed is where I planted the watermelon radish and the golden radish. And I've got some space right down the middle. And I'm going to plant some bunching onions. Now these are some that we've been sent to trial. I'm not afraid of the radishes shading out these bunching onions. The golden ones will be ready soon, and I'll just start pulling that first row out first so there's plenty of room for these bunching onions to grow. I just gently raked them in and then patted them down with the back of the rake. In this bed, I'm going to plant some Savanna Mustard. I love this type because it grows more upright and it kind of has a slick leaf. Now, you only planted a 1/4 inch thick, so what I'm going to do is just broadcast it, and then lightly rake it in. And I already went ahead and wet this bed just ever so slightly, just so the seeds will be a little bit wet and give them a little jump start. So I'm just going to broadcast this in after I've rolled back my irrigation tubing. Just liberally sprinkle it in there, take your garden rake and scratch it around ever so gently and then pat it down. Then I'll lay my irrigation tubing back and stake it in place. This next bed is where I had some of my herbs. I had some horehound here. And as I trimmed my holy basil, which is next, I would throw some of the blooms in here. So I have some holy basil growing. Oh, it smells so good in here too. And I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to turn over this bed.
I'm just going to plant some Calendula Prince mix right in here with this holy basil. When the frost comes, this holy basil will get burnt back. Um, and this calendula, it will last pretty much throughout the winter unless we get a hard freeze like we did last year.
And I'm just going to roughly scrape back a little bit of the soil and plant this randomly. I don't really have a pattern at the end. I just ended up sprinkling it all in there, but it comes up really good.
Next, I'm going to plant some Imperial Star spinach. We planted this for the first time last year and loved it. The taste was great. It grows upright. You just trim it and it comes again. It lasted all winter long, even through that Arctic blast. So again, I just wet this bed ever so slightly. I'm going to sprinkle it, rake it in with my garden rake, and tamp it down. And then I'll water it one more time.
Here we go again. You know the drill. Sprinkle, rake it in, tamp it down, and water it, and you're good to go.
In this bed, I also had some herbs, some mother's wort, and you can see it's all gone. It just needs to be. I'm just going to pull these up, leave all this organic matter in here, and I'm going to plant some Chicago beets, which is kind of look like a watermelon, and then some touch tone gold beets.
Here I'm going to do similar to what I did for the radishes. I'm just going to make me a small furrow on each side of a drip line and plant 2 rows on either side, about a 1/4 inch thick, and then take my garden rake and cover the soil and tamp it down. Now, after I planted each one of these beds, I did take the misting nozzle on the water hose and wet them all. I don't think I showed it on all the beds, but be sure you water this in really well. Even though I've got the drip irrigation, you want to overhead water it in the first time. Now I'm going to get this bed ready to plant my carrots. I'm not going to plant them. I don't know if I plant them the next day or wait 2 days. But again, I've turned this soil almost every day for about a week to 7 days, about 10 inches down. Get it really loose, remove any debris. And I'm going to soak it really well. I poured the water to this. I'm going to let it sit overnight because you've got to have that moisture for good carrot germination. So the next day, you can see how much it's dried out, but if you reach down, there is some moisture in the soil. I'm going to put my irrigation tubing back and stake it in, and I will water it one more time before I plant the seeds because the seeds are so small, you don't want this water hitting them right after you plant it. So make sure it's really moist before you ever put those seeds in the ground. I'm going to make just a very shallow furrow here. You actually could just plant them straight on top of the ground and you'll be fine. This kind of gives me a line, so I have somewhat of a direction here, although I didn't quite follow it. You'll see once they come up, they were scattered. The first type I'm going to plant is the Scarlet Nantes carrot. This is one of my favorites. And I'm just going to take the seed packet and slightly tap it and let those seeds fall out. Carrots are okay to plant really thick. You can start eating them when they're young, and as you eat them, you will be thinning out the carrots. They will nudge each other about and create plenty of room, so I'm never really worried about how thick. Once I get them in there, I'm just going to take that soil and pat it ever so lightly. You don't want to compact it down really tight. So just gently pat it down to cover up those seeds so they're not going to go anywhere. The other type I planted was yellow bunch. These are really easy to grow too. I've planted these for the last 3 years They're not quite as sweet as the other, but I love when I can these or ferment having this multicolored. And here again, I'm just lightly patting the soil over those seeds that I planted. Now, Mr. Hoss has come down here. He's going to help me plant some cauliflower. He put in some complete organic fertilizer, and this is where we had those peanuts. There's a video on it a couple of weeks ago. He's planting this every 12 inches, and they are emitters on this small drip tubing every 6 inches. So you want to make sure you plant these transplants on the emitters so they get plenty of water when they're first starting out. And here we go. So I'm just going to plant one row. Our Hoss is going to plant one on each side. Next is some broccoli, and this was the bed where I had the holy basil. I've trimmed it all back. I'm not going to pull it up. I'm hoping if I don't disturb it very much, next year it'll just reseed and come back. So here, doing the same thing, planting about 12 inches apart and trying to plant it, each of them on an emitter so they'll get that water to get a good jump start. And you can see those holy basil stems where I cut them off. So here we are about 8 to 14 days later. Here's my carrots that are coming up, and they're doing really well, getting those first leaves on there. Here is the calendula, and I did put the dates I planted on these markers. I think it really helps. So you can see the small little plants. Here is the radishes and the buncheon onions and the golden radish. Already I've started harvesting out of here. So the plan with the buncheon onions is going to work out well. Here's the Savanna Mustard. It's coming along well. We're expecting a cold snap in about a week. It's going to be great on it. And here is the spinach. Now, it did not germinate quite as well as the other stuff, but once it gets tall, it'll cover that bed. Here's some echinacea I planted early in the spring, and I'm hoping it'll just overwinter. Here's some lemon drop I planted in the spring. I'm just going to wait and let the frost kill it and plant some celery there. Here is my magnolia English peas and my sugar snaps, and I've got a rabbit or some critter eating one side of these off. Here are the multiplying onions, the Thom and the LITOI, the new variety that we've got going. They just popped right up and are doing well. And here's the garlic, and the elephant garlic has already started popping through that straw, and that is okay. Our winters are mild down here, and it won't hurt. Here's some turmeric I planted back in the spring. I'll be harvesting it before it freezes. Behind the sitting area is where I've got some of my herbs, some thyme. I also planted a few garlic there, some oregano, some tarragon, and on the very end I've got some stevia. Now we're hoping to carry stevia seed in the near future. I have really enjoyed this, and look at those pretty little blooms on there. In the very back is where I had planted the tobacco, just as an experiment. It was too shaded, but in the end it's lasted all summer, and here it is, October, and I've still got the pretty flowers, and I have some turmeric in there trying to work on to see what it grows best. Here's my roselle, and on the end here is, you can see those empty pots. When I broke down my other raised beds, I dumped a bunch of stuff here, and I'm just letting it grow. I've got some native hibiscus, some potato plants, Mexican petunia, butterfly bush, chives, just a whole mixture. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll keep you updated on this, how this garden grows throughout the fall. See you next time.